Although the number of pastors at Lake Avenue Baptist Church from 1961 to 1991 was very few, their impact was significant. George Hill was born on December 13, 1916, in Los Angeles, California. He graduated from Alhambra High School in 1933. It was in 1937 that he graduated from the University of California with a Bachelor of Science in Business Administration, having majored in banking and finance. That same year, he started his studies at Colgate-Rochester Divinity School. His roommate was Hugh Morton. During the 3 years at CRDS, George Hill and Hugh Morton served as student ministers at LABC. Among the many stories, occasionally George would forget to call the church office with his text for the Sunday school class lesson, so the office would call him, and when he was not in, Hugh would give the most unlikely text. George never blinked, always coming through on Sunday morning with an ability to give a Sunday school class on that obscure text. In 1940, George graduated from CRDS, and he and Hugh were ordained in May at the same service held at LABC. George returned to his native California to serve as pastor at Atwater Baptist Church in Pasadena, California, for the next 4 years. From a piece written while George was a student minister at LABC, we read the following. About this time, we began to hear about a Mary Jones in Long Beach, California. We believed the name to be fictitious, but we finally met her when she came to the Eastman School of Music to study for a year. And in 1941, wedding bells rang out as George and Mary were married on November 28th at First Baptist Church, Pasadena. In 1944, Reverend Hill resigned his pastorate at Atwater to accept a call to the First Baptist Church in Pasadena, California. George served the Pasadena Church for 10 years. Before leaving, he was named Citizen of the Year by the Pasadena Jewish Community Council. On March 28, 1954, LABC congregation extended a call to Reverend Hill to succeed Reverend Dr. Gerald Watkins. Reverend Hill immediately began to engage in community life in Rochester, continuing a long tradition of LABC pastors. We know that George was also active in the American Baptist Convention. In fact, in 1959, we discover that he was a member of the American Baptist Convention's Council on Christian Social Progress. He was also engaged in the life of the Monroe Baptist Association. We also read from an article from 1962 that Pastor Hill was also active in the area and state ministries in New York. In 1964, LABC had undertaken an extensive renovation of the church building. The congregation, unbeknownst to Reverend Hill, decided to celebrate his 10-year anniversary as pastor as part of the celebration for the completion of the renovation. For many in the congregation, they know that he was always one to raise challenging questions, even if those questions challenged the status quo of the community. Rochester was one of the first major cities to experience race riots in 1964. Reverend Hill took up the issues involved and played a major role in the events that followed. In 1965, he made a 2-month around-the-globe tour visiting many Christian mission sites. As part of that tour, the Garo tribe in Assam, a northeast province in India, equipped the Lake Avenue Baptist Church pastor and made him an honorary member of their tribe. In 1965, as part of the tour, he helped to dedicate the new building at the Ishihara San Mission in Tokyo. The school was adopted in 1918 in honor of Winifred Bevan, deceased daughter of Reverend Albert Bevan. Many newspaper articles speak to the fact that Dr. Hill had a way of turning a phrase that immediately caught people's attention. In 1967, the remarkable community work inaugurated by LABC took center stage at the annual convention of the American Baptist Churches held in Pittsburgh. In 1968, we read about Wedge, an outgrowth of the aftermath of the race riots from 1964. This movement was spawned by George's leadership in the race issues, but was also guided into existence by Bob Mahone, an LABC layman. In 1969, on the road again, Pastor Hill took his family on a 3-month tour of the USSR and Eastern Soviet countries. And finally, in 1971, after 17 years of ministry at LABC that impacted the entire Rochester community enormously, Reverend Hill resigned his pastorate. It was that year that Reverend Hill accepted a call to assume the senior minister position at Calvary Baptist Church in Washington, D.C. While at Calvary, he engaged his congregation in significant ministries with immigrants, the homeless, mentally ill, and children in the Black Ghetto. While at Calvary, in 1985, Dr. Hill received the Dahlberg Peace Award presented by the American Baptist Home Mission Society at the American Baptist Church's biennial. In 1986, he retired from Calvary and attempted to move back to California to live at Pilgrim Place in Claremont, California. However, in 1988, he was soon called to serve as interim pastor at the Riverside Baptist Church in New York City. Following his time in New York City, he returned to Pilgrim Place only to be called as an associate pastor by the First Baptist Church of Los Angeles. Dr. George W. Hill passed away on March 3, 2003. His funeral service was held on March 9th at First Baptist Church of Los Angeles, California.